إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم كثيرا. This is our second gathering here at Ma'had Sheikh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah in Tanzania, but it's our first gathering to read from the book Minhaj Salaf al-Salih wa Hajatul Ummah Ilayhi by our beloved Sheikh Salih al-Fawzan Hafizahullah Ta'ala. And it's important for our brothers to know that this was actually a lecture. This risala that we have in front of us was actually a lecture that was delivered by Sheikh Salih al-Fawzan Hafizahullah Ta'ala about 15 or more years ago in Riyadh. He gave it as a lecture. So there's a difference between a lecture that was given and a book that was authored. So this lecture was transcribed into a book, but it was not a book that was authored by the Sheikh Hafizahullah Ta'ala. If it was a book, you would find many more proofs mentioned, but it was a lecture. So the lecture, the Sheikh Hafizahullah Ta'ala gave the lecture and it was transcribed, but alhamdulillah, it's summarized, but it's very beneficial. It's summarized, but it's very beneficial. Walillahi alhamd. And the lecture was translated by the grace of Allah Azza wa Jal over 15 years ago. We received permission from Sheikh Salih al-Fawzan Hafizahullah Ta'ala to translate it. We sought his permission and he gave us that permission, so we translated it into English. So it is available in English, but as long as our brothers speak Arabic, they can read from the Arabic. So we're going to try to go through it bi'idhnillahi ta'ala and give minimum comments, not too many comments, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, today, now, and the rest of the day, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And this topic was discussed by the Salaf al-Salih, as we mentioned yesterday when we discussed knowledge, and we mentioned some of the books of the Salaf as it relates to knowledge. And the same goes for this topic, the Manhaj al-Salafi. You find it mentioned in the books of Aqeedah of the Salaf. You have, for example, Usul al-Sunnah by Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal rahmatullahi alayhi. Likewise, you have Sharh al-Sunnah by Imam al-Barbahari. Likewise, you have As-Sunnah by Abdullah ibn Ahmad, the son of the Imam Ahmad. Likewise, you have As-Sunnah lil Khallal. You likewise have the books of Iman by Qasim bin Salam, the book of Iman, and Ibn Abi Shaybah, the book of Iman. Likewise, you had the book of Iman by Ibn Mundeh and Kitab al-Tawheed by Ibn Mundeh and Kitab al-Tawheed by Ibn Khuzaymah. You have the book of Ash-Shari'ah by Imam al-Ajurri that we mentioned yesterday. You have Sharh Usul al-I'tiqad by Imam al-Laylakai, and many more. So the Salaf, rahimahumullah ta'ala, the Salaf wrote various books of Aqidah and Minhaj and Sunnah, and those books explain the Minhaj of the Salaf Salih. Some of those books just mention the Aqidah of the Salaf Salih without mentioning the proofs. And some of those books mention the Aqidah and the Minhaj by way of the proof, whether from the Quran or from the Sunnah. For example, Usul al-Sunnah by Imam Ahmad doesn't mention the proofs. It just mentions the Aqeedah of Ahl al-Sunnah. Similar to Sharh al-Sunnah by Imam al-Barbahari. Imam al-Barbahari rahmatullahi alayhi, Imam al-Barbahari doesn't mention the proofs. He just mentions the Aqeedah. But other books like Kitab al-Tawheed by Imam Ibn Khuzaymah, no, it mentions the proofs. So it mentions each of the beliefs of Ahl Sunnah with the Isnad. With the Isnad. Similar, Al-Shari'ah by Imam Al-Ajurri, it mentions the Aqeedah with the Isnad. So it's a book of Hadith, but it's a book of Aqeedah. Kitab al-Tawheed by Imam Ibn Khuzaymah, Kitab al-Shari'ah by Al-Ajurri, and others, it's a book of Hadith and Aqeedah. Because it mentions the Aqeedah, but it mentions it with the chain of Isnad. Now, and then you have the books of Sheikh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah ta'ala, the Minhaj al-Sunnah, and others. And from the summarized works of Sheikh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, rahmatullahi alayhi, Al-Aqeedah al-Wasitiyya. Al-Aqeedah al-Wasitiyya is a summarized book that explains the Aqeedah of Ahl al-Sunnah wal-Jama'ah. Then you had the books of his student Ibn al-Qayyim. And then you had the books of Sheikh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, rahimahullah ta'ala. And the books of Sheikh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, for the person who reads the books and they know the books of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, Sheikh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, rahmatullahi alayhi, did not come with anything new. He summarized the books of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah. If you read the books of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, and then you read the books of Sheikh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, it becomes very clear that Shaykh al-Islam, that Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab summarized the books of Ibn Taymiyyah. Because the books of Ibn Taymiyyah are vast books, voluminous books. So Shaykh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, rahmatullahi alayhi, did a tremendous service for the ummah. Because he realized it would be difficult for the layman to read and understand the books of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah. So he summarized many of the works of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah into small books that are easy to comprehend and grasp for the layman. Al-Qawa'id al-Arba, Al-Usul al-Thalatha, Usul al-Sitta, Kitab al-Tawheed, all of those are summaries of the books of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, rahmatullahi alayhi. From the books of the present day scholars that discuss the Salafi Manhaj, you have Al-Manhaj al-Salafi by our beloved Sheikh Abdullah ibn Abdul Rahim al-Bukhari. He has a book that discusses Al-Manhaj al-Salafi. And likewise you have another book similar to that by Sheikh Abdullah al-Dhafiri, hafizahullah ta'ala. You have a wonderful book that was recently published by Sheikh Muhammad Aman al-Jami. By Sheikh Muhammad Aman al-Jami, rahmatullahi alayhi, Ittiba'u al-Manhaj al-Salafi wajibun la khiyara fihi. A book by Sheikh Muhammad Aman al-Jami, rahmatullahi alayhi, Ittiba'u Manhaj al-Salafi wajibun la khiyara fihi. That's a book that was published recently by and it's authored by Sheikh Muhammad Aman al-Jami, rahmatullahi alayhi. And likewise a very, very beneficial book, Al-Ajwibat al-Mufida an As'ilat al-Manahij al-Jadida, الأجوبة المفيدة عن أسئلة المناهج الجديدة. It's questions and answers on the Salafi minhaj, and the answers are by Sheikh Salih al-Fawzan Habibullah Ta'ala, the same author of this book that we're reading, and it was compiled by Sheikh Jamal al-Harithi rahmatullahi alayhi. A wonderful book with questions and answers on the Salafi manhaj. You also have a book by Sheikh al-Albani rahmatullahi alayhi. A book by Sheikh al-Albani, an old book by Sheikh al-Albani that speaks about the Sunnah. And you have a book by Sheikh Muqbil rahmatullahi alayhi, our beloved Sheikh Muqbil. هذه عقيدتنا. This is our aqidah. That's another summarized book that speaks about the manhaj as-Salaf as-Salih by our beloved Sheikh Muqbil ibn Hadi Abu Abdurrahman rahmatullahi alayhi. So that shows us how the Salaf of the past and the current scholars gave importance to explaining the manhaj as-Salafi. In beginning the Risala, you have it in front of you, and we'll read through it and give some comments بإذن ta'ala, summarized comments. يقول الشيخ صالح الفوزان حفظه الله تعالى: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين، وبعد. فالموضوع موضوع مهم جدا، وهو كما سمعتم وأعلن عنه منهج السلف الصالح وحاجة الأمة إليه. والمراد بالسلف الصالح القرن الأول من هذه الأمة، وهم صحابة رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من المهاجرين والأنصار. قال الله جل وعلا: والسابقون الأولون من المهاجرين والأنصار والذين اتبعوهم بإحسان رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه وعد لهم جنات تجري تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها أبدا ذلك الفوز العظيم. قال سبحانه: للفقراء المهاجرين الذين أخرجوا من ديارهم وأموالهم يبتغون فضلا من الله ورضوانا وينصرون الله ورسوله أولئك هم الصادقون. يقول الشيخ: هذه في المهاجرين، ثم قال في الأنصار: والذين تبوأوا الدار والإيمان من قبلهم يحبون من هاجر إليهم ولا يجدون في صدورهم حاجة مما أوتوا ويؤثرون على أنفسهم ولو كان بهم خصاصة ومن يوق شح نفسه فأولئك هم المفلحون. ثم قال في الذين يأتون من بعدهم: والذين جاءوا من بعدهم يقولون ربنا اغفر لنا ولإخواننا الذين سبقونا بالإيمان ولا تجعل في قلوبنا غلا للذين آمنوا ربنا إنك رؤوف رحيم. في سورة الحشر. Here the Sheikh Hafizahullah Ta'ala began by explaining who are the Salaf. Who are the Salaf as-Salih? And it's important that we understand when the scholars of Islam, whether they are the scholars of the past or the scholars of the present,